Joining us on the line is Mike Gonzalez, Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation and author of the brand new book, The Plot to Change America, How Identity Politics is Dividing the Land of the Free. Mike, great to talk to you.
Ben, it's my pleasure to be on with you. Thank you very much.
So let's talk about your book. Obviously, it could not be more timely. We are watching identity politics completely destroy the country. There's a great CNN headline today suggesting that women were actually just individuals with a cervix. So how exactly do you think that a country is going to survive when we have decided not to treat each other as individuals at all, but treat each other as members of identity groups?
Well, I will say that when you and I decided last year to sit down and write books on this issue, little did we know that the summer of 2020 was going to happen. My book is doing very well. I assume yours is doing even better, but it's for reasons that neither you nor I really like, I think. We're seeing this issue of identity politics. The consequences is the summer of 2020. You take a nation, you divide it into groups based on race, ethnicity, sex, sexual orientation, and so forth, characteristics that are pretty immutable, and you filled the members with grievances and resentment, and something bad will happen. And this is what we're seeing right now. I do think that there is a way out. I do have solutions, but the first step, and the reason I wrote this book, The Plot to Change America, is to draw attention to this, to tell Americans, this is what has happened to your country. This is how it happened. This is who did it, why, and how we can get out.
So, Mike, where exactly did this come from? I know on the show we've talked about identity politics and its sort of origins, but what exactly is identity politics, and where did the concept begin?
Well, the concept, as you know, started with Gramsci, the leader of the Communist Party in Italy in the 1920s. The fascists sent him to prison so his brain will stop working. That is a very bad idea, as we know from the example of the Apostle Paul and everyone else. You have a lot of time to think in prison. So he writes a book called Prison Diaries, in which he says, look, Marx promised revolutions, but they have all failed except for one in one backwater place called Russia in 1917. The reason is the worker is too contented. The worker has bought into the givens of the oppressor. He has bought into the idea of the family, the religion, the economic system, and we have to change the way he thinks through consciousness-raising exercises. We need to remove the hegemonic narrative. The hegemonic narrative to you and me and the normal people who are listening to this show is the American dream, right? The American dream that has produced so much prosperity and liberty. But to the left, that has produced inequality. So we have to remove that and change the way people think about this through consciousness raising. Identity politics is the playing out of that. Obviously, later came Marcuse, who changed, so Gramsci changes Marxism from economics to culture. Marcuse then also, now he's here in the United States, he's also despairing just the way Gramsci did, but he says the American worker is really content, is never going to rebel, but he's noticing the riots. He says, if we create identity groups based on race, these groups will be the ones who will carry out the revolution. So this is how it begins. This is the reason why I call it The Plot to Change America. There are no Thursday night meetings in a basement, but it is people reading the same text, the same critical theory text.
So, Mike, what is the end goal here? Because it seems like this is a pretty good way of tearing down a system, is identity politics, dividing people by race and then aggregating them against the system. But how do you form a new system when everybody is now divided into tribal identity? I understand that this sort of Marxist theory here, the critical race theory that suggests that there will be a sort of cross-racial new man founded, but I'm not seeing it. Once the tribalism takes over, it seems pretty difficult to build a socialist utopia on the basis of tribalism.
Well, they do think that it will be through the process of group dynamic and group interaction, and people are, belong to collectives. It's not only really the individual that matters, but it is the identity collective who will do, bargaining. Peter Thiel, who wrote a good book on this in the 1990s, he said the inevitable disagreements, the inevitable problems that will come up between groups will always be resolved in a manner that best helps the left. It will always be the most leftist solution when a group has an inevitable problem with another group. Obviously, it doesn't work. And that is the reason why I'm optimistic. It's because Marxists tried to do the impossible, right? They tried to change human nature. You know that human nature is unchangeable. You go to the Old Testament and you read about Abraham and Sarah and Moses, and we see ourselves in them. They're the same people as us. Human nature hasn't changed in thousands of years. So when the Marxists fail to change human nature, they must fall upon coercion and violence. They must fall upon cancel culture and all the things we see today. But I think Americans are too attached to liberty to really put up with this.
So, Mike, I know that I'm hopeful, too, that Americans will react against a lot of this stuff, but it does feel like there's not a lot standing in the way of it right now. There's some folks on sort of the liberal left who have decided to fight back against the cancel culture, which is largely rooted in identity politics. But it seems dubious to me that Joe Biden is going to stand up to this in any real way. He was elected in the primaries basically in order to stand up to a lot of this, but not only is he failing to stand up to it, it seems like he's empowering it. What do you make of Joe Biden's candidacy, which is so split along these lines?
You know, I don't want to get into politics, obviously, but I will address one part of what you said, and that is, yes, I think I take great heart from the fact that so many liberals are joining our cause. Steven Pinker, Barry Weiss, Andrew Sullivan, Dave Rubin. These people don't agree with me on many things. They don't agree with me on abortion. They don't agree with me on social issues, but they do agree with me on this. So I think, the left is fond of saying this year is going to be an inflection year. I think it is an inflection year because Americans are waking up, seeing what is happening in Portland, even though CNN is not putting it on TV, even though the networks are not putting it on TV. People are seeing what is happening and saying, maybe what we have been doing has not been such a great thing. Maybe teaching our kids that their system is no good and needs to be replaced wholesale and transformed wholesale is not the best way to approach this. I, in my own humble way, just as you have done with your book, I wrote my book, The Plot to Change America, in order to shed light on this, to bring attention to it. I should say, by the way, that somebody Michael Knowles, is going to be with me on Tuesday at 11:15 and for the launch of the book. And I'm really very much looking forward to that. People can go to heritage.org and sign up, do the RSVP on that.
Well, Mike, I'm sorry for you. I'm glad that you're going to, I hope that you enjoy the time with Michael more than we've ever enjoyed any time with Michael, but it should be a great event, so go check that out. The book is The Plot to Change America, How Identity Politics is Dividing the Land of the Free. Mike Gonzalez of Heritage Foundation. Really appreciate the time. And good luck with the book.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thank
Alrighty,
you. Great book. Congratulations on your book.
Hey, thanks so much.